I am 95 years old, and I have buried more dreams than people. Looking back, I don't regret the chances I took. I regret the chances I was too afraid to take. If you are young, don't scroll away. The next few minutes could save you from carrying the same invisible wounds I've carried for a lifetime. Listen to an old man's story before life forces you to learn these lessons the hard way. I am 95 years old today. The trembling in my hands, the wrinkles on my face, and the weakness in my voice may look like signs of old age to you, but to me, they are reminders of every wrong decision I made throughout my life. Son, come and sit beside me. I am not telling you a story, I'm telling you my life. If you listen with your heart, perhaps you will never repeat the mistakes that changed my entire life. When I was your age, I had enormous dreams. I promised myself that one day I would become so successful that the whole world would know my name. I believed money was everything. I was convinced that once I became wealthy, happiness would automatically find its way into my life. That belief pushed me to work from morning until late at night without stopping. My father would often say to me, "Son, life is not only about earning a living, it is also about living." But I would smile and reply, "This is the time to work hard. I can rest later." That word, later, became the most dangerous word of my life. I turned down invitations from friends. I missed precious moments with my family. Instead of sitting with my mother and sharing a cup of tea, I always chose to go back to work. I kept convincing myself that once I became successful, I would have plenty of time for everyone. But life waits for no one. One evening, while I was busy working, my phone rang. A trembling voice on the other end said, "Come to the hospital immediately. Your father is very ill." I rushed there as fast as I could, but I was too late. My father lay there in complete silence. His eyes were closed forever. I sat beside him, held his hand, and for the first time in my life, I realized that no amount of money, success, or status could buy back the one moment I had chosen to spend at work instead of with him. That day, I cried harder than I had ever cried before. But my tears could not bring time back. Son, life taught me my very first lesson that day. The love you postpone today may not be there tomorrow. If your parents are still alive today, sit with them. Listen to their stories. Laugh with them. Believe me, one day you may be able to buy almost anything in this world, but you will never be able to buy back the moments you failed to spend with the people you love. This is only the beginning of my story. My greatest regrets are still ahead, and perhaps among them lies the lesson that could change your life forever. I thought losing my father would change me, but a man is often a prisoner of his own habits. For a few days I made promises to myself, but before long I was back to the same routine, the same work, the same endless race, the same busy life. I kept comforting myself by saying, "Just a few more years of hard work, and then I'll finally live in peace." Those few more years became my entire life. Time passed. I built a house, expanded my business, and watched my bank account grow. But while my wealth increased, my home slowly became empty. My wife would often say, "We need you more than we need your money." Every time, I smiled and replied, "I'm doing all of this for you." Back then, I truly believed my answer was right. Today, at 95 years old, I realized that it was the second biggest lie of my life. My children grew up little by little. Their first steps, their first day of school, their first achievements, their first awards. I was absent from most of those moments. In family photographs, there was often an empty space where I should have been. Whenever they asked, "Dad, when are you coming home?" I would answer, "Next week, son." I promise that next week never came. One day my son walked into my room holding a drawing. Smiling with excitement, he said, "Dad, I drew a picture of our family." I looked at the drawing. It showed his mother, himself, and his sister, but I wasn't in it. Surprised, I asked, "Son, where am I?" He looked at me innocently and said, "You're always at work." "Dad, I didn't know where to draw you." Son, that single sentence shattered my heart like glass hitting the floor. For the first time, I realized that in my children's lives, I had become more of a visitor than a father. Even today, when I look at that old drawing, my hands begin to tremble. I have more wealth than I ever dreamed of, but I can never get back the childhood my children wanted to share with me. So always remember what I'm about to tell you. Children don't ask for your time, they ask for you. If you miss their childhood, no success, no fortune, and no apology in the world will ever bring it back. And the saddest part is, my greatest regrets were still not over. The deepest pain was yet to come. Son, time waits for no one. Before I knew it, my hair had turned gray, my face was covered with wrinkles, and the strength I once took pride in slowly faded away. But one thing never stopped growing. My wealth? My bank accounts became full, my businesses flourished, and people began calling me a successful man. Yet every night, as I sat alone in my large house, a strange silence slowly consumed me from the inside. I had spent my entire life believing that once I had everything, I would finally be happy. But when I finally had everything, I realized I had no one left to share that happiness with. One day I decided to call my old friends. Some were no longer alive. Some had drifted so far away that we hadn't spoken in years. Others simply said, "It's too late now." I hung up the phone and sat there in complete silence. At that moment, I learned the third and perhaps the most painful lesson of my life. Relationships are like plants. If you don't give them time, care, and love, they slowly wither away. I always believed that true relationships would wait for me forever. But the truth is, time doesn't just change the hands of a clock. It changes people's hearts too. A few years later, my wife became seriously ill. I visited her in the hospital every day. I sat beside her, held her hand, but there was always a silent question in her eyes. One day, in a weak voice, she said, "If you had given me this much time when we were young, perhaps our life would have been very different." I lowered my head. I had no answer. Son, the greatest punishment in life is not losing everything. It is realizing far too late what truly mattered. Today, people admire my success, but they have no idea that I paid for it with the most precious relationships of my life. So remember this one thing. Money can be earned again. Lost respect can be rebuilt. But the time you fail to spend with the people you love can never be recovered. That was only my third mistake. Now I am about to tell you the regret that made me cry every single night, the regret I could never forgive myself for. Son, By then I was well into my 90s. My body had grown weak, and I needed a walking cane just to move around. But the weakest part of me was no longer my body, it was my soul. Every night, before I fell asleep, my entire life played before my eyes like an old movie. I kept asking myself, what if I had spent just a few more hours with my father that day? What if I had chosen my children's childhood over my endless work? What if I had understood my wife's silent pain while there was still time? Perhaps my life would have been completely different. One day I opened an old wooden box that had been sitting untouched for years. Inside were a few photographs, several letters, and a small diary I had written in my youth. On the very first page I had written, "One day I will travel the world, spend more time with my parents, become my children's best friend, and sit with my family every evening, laughing together." I stared at those words for a long time. Then tears began to roll down my face. At that moment I realized that no one had stolen my dreams from me. I had sacrificed them with my own hands in the name of being busy. Yes, I had achieved success, but I had never lived the life I once dreamed of living. That day, I learned another painful truth. The greatest pain in life does not come from the dreams we fail to achieve. It comes from the dreams we never even begin because we keep saying, later. Son, fear is a thief. It doesn't steal your money. It steals your entire life. We keep telling ourselves that we still have plenty of time. Why, I'll do it tomorrow, next month, next year. But life keeps moving forward in complete silence. And one day you suddenly realize that tomorrow never came. Today, at 95 years old, I sit before you with no youth left, no strength left, and no time left. All I have are my regrets, and my greatest wish is that you never allow these regrets to become your own. But, son, my story is still not over. One final lesson remains, the lesson that gathered every regret of my life into a single truth. If you truly understand it, you may live the life I always wished I had. Son, today I am 95 years old. Perhaps these are the last few days, the last few weeks, or the last few months of my life. I am no longer afraid of death. There is only one thing I truly regret, that I understood the real meaning of life far too late. A few weeks ago, I was sitting alone in my garden. It was autumn. The leaves were quietly falling from the trees. As I watched them drift to the ground, I suddenly saw my own life reflected in them. We human beings are just like those leaves. As long as we remain attached to the branch, we believe we have all the time in the world. But when the time comes to fall, we realize that life passed by in the blink of an eye. Throughout my life, I gained many things: wealth, respect, success, a beautiful house, and a thriving business. But today, as I sit alone in my room, none of those things speak to me. My bank account cannot hold my hand. My big house cannot cure my loneliness. My achievements cannot wipe away my tears. In the end, only memories remain. And if those memories are not beautiful, old age becomes the greatest punishment of all. So, son, always remember these 5 lessons from my life. First, never take time for granted, because once it is gone, not all the wealth in the world can bring it back. Second, always make time for your parents, your family, and your friends. Relationships do not stay strong on their own. They need love, attention, and care. Third, Earn money, but never let money become your master. Wealth is a tool for living, not the purpose of life. Fourth, never keep postponing your dreams for someday. Life does not wait for people who spend their lives waiting for the perfect moment. Fifth, and most important, every night before you go to sleep, ask yourself one question. If today were the last day of my life, would I be proud of how I lived it? If the answer is no, then have the courage to change your life the very next morning. Son, I cannot live my life again, but you still can change yours. When you leave here today, hug your parents. Sit with your family and laugh with them. Begin working on your dreams. Live each day in such a way that when you grow old, you never have to say the words that have haunted me all my life. I wish I had valued my time. I wish I had never sacrificed love for work. I wish I had truly lived my life instead of merely passing through it. If my story has touched your heart, don't just listen to it. Learn from it, because my greatest wish is that my mistakes become the reason for your success. And always remember, it is not the length of life that matters. It is how you live it that becomes your true legacy.